Most Excel users never go beyond the built-in conditional formatting rules. A color scale here, a greater than rule there. But the moment you start using formulas, everything changes. Formula-based conditional formatting lets you highlight entire rows, flag missing data, catch errors, track deadlines, all automatically in real time. In this video, I'll show you the rules that will save you from manually scanning your spreadsheets trying to spot problems. Real-world examples, practical scenarios, stuff you can actually use. And as always, you can download the free practice file in the description or pinned comment and follow along. Let's start with one of the most practical conditional formatting tricks there is. Formatting an entire row based on the value in a single column. Here I've got a client orders table. We've got order ID, client, product, amount, order date, and status. And what I want is simple. Any order that's been cancelled should immediately stand out. The whole row, not just the status cell. So let me select the entire range, cell C5 through to H19. And that's important. If I only selected the status column, only that column gets formatted. I need all the rows selected first. And conditional formatting, new rule. And here I want to use a formula to determine which cells to format. The formula is simply where the status cell, H5, equals cancelled. Now by default, the cell reference will be absolute. That is, the column and the row reference will be locked. The first $sign locks the column. No matter which cell Excel is currently checking, it always looks in column H for the status. And then I need to remove the $sign from before the row reference of 5. And that tells the conditional formatting to check each row in the range selected. Then I simply set a format. So I'm going to set the font to red. And let's apply a red fill color, but we'll go into more colors and we'll tone it down to a pale shade of pink. Okay, we get the preview, click OK, and there you go. Every cancelled order is now instantly visible across the full row. And the beauty of this is it's live. If I change any status from, say, pending to cancelled, the formatting updates immediately. If I change a cancelled order to pending, the formatting goes away. Next up, highlighting rows where actual spend exceeds budget. This is a 2-column comparison, and it's one of those rules that saves you from scanning numbers manually every single time you open the file. Here's my table. We've got month, campaign, channel, manager, budget, and actual. And what I want is for any row where the actual spend is higher than budget to immediately stand out. Again, I'm going to select all the rows that I want to format, and then conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula to determine which cells to format. And the formula is simply where the actual is greater than the budget. Now here's a quick tip. If you want to be able to use your arrow keys inside the conditional formatting formula bar, press the F2 key. That puts the formula bar into edit mode, and now I can use my arrows. Remember, I want to remove the $sign from before the row reference, but keeping the column references locked. Let's apply a fill color here. We'll just apply an orange fill. Click OK. And there it is. Every campaign where spend went over budget is now flagged across the full row. No manual checking. Now let me show you how to make this even more useful. What if you want to focus on the largest variances first? Let's add a second rule. Again, we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. And this time it's going to be where the actual is greater than the budget multiplied by 1.1. In other words, actual spend needs to be more than 10% over budget to trigger the rule. We need to get rid of the $sign before the row reference, and we'll format this in red. Let's go with a red font and a red fill color. We'll just go in and tone down the background fill. Okay, there's the preview. Now, if you don't see the formatting, go into the conditional formatting rules dialog box and make sure the red rule is above the orange rule. You can use the arrow buttons here to rearrange the order. That way the red rule gets applied first, and anything that doesn't qualify for the red rule gets the orange rule. Now with one glance, you know exactly where the problems are. And you can apply this same logic to any table where two numbers should stay in a certain relationship to each other. This next one is simple, but it might be the one you use most often. Automatically flagging rows where critical information is missing. Here I've got a client contact list. Names, company emails, phone numbers, account managers, all fake data, of course. It looks fine at first glance, but scan through it and you'll start spotting gaps. We've got missing emails, missing phone numbers, and missing account manager information. In a list of 15 like this, it's manageable. In a list of 500, you'd have a hard time catching them all manually. So let's make the sheet do it for us. And we're simply going to flag any row where any empty cells exist. Selecting all the rows, conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula. I'm going to start with the isBlank function, and it's going to test each cell in each row. I'm just writing the rule for the first row, and then remember we use the absolute referencing to make sure the column reference is locked, F2 to allow me to arrow through, and delete the $ from the row reference. Now because we've given isBlank a range, Excel checks every cell from column C through to H and returns an array of true and false results, one for each cell. But conditional formatting can't take an array, so we need to reduce that array down to a single value. And we do that by placing the double unary, or two minus signs, before the isBlank formula. That's going to convert those true and false values into an array of ones and zeros. So blank cells become 1 and cells with data become 0. And then all I need to do is wrap that in the sum function to return a single number. Any number other than 0 will get the formatting, and any 0 results don't get formatted. Let's go in and we'll apply a cell fill color in yellow. Let's just go in and tone it down a bit. OK, OK, and OK. And now every row with missing data is highlighted. If you fill in the missing data, the format's removed. The more Excel functions you know, the more powerful your conditional formatting rules become. What we've built so far is just the beginning. Once you know XLOOKUPs, SUMIFs, nested ifs, and more, you can build rules that would genuinely surprise most Excel users. If you want to go deep on formulas, I've got a full course on that, and the link's in the description. It covers the functions that give you the biggest efficiency gains at work, including the less obvious ways to use them that most people never learn. It's worth checking out if formulas are something you want to get serious about. Okay, let's keep going. This next one is for anyone who works with a column of free text notes, comments or feedback like this. Finding specific words buried in that column manually is tedious. With one formula, you can make Excel surface them for you instantly. Let's say HR needs to quickly identify anything that mentions burnout or flags something as urgent. With the cells selected, conditional formatting, new rule, and we're going to use a formula. Now I'm going to use the search function to search for the word urgent. Now search is not case sensitive, so it'll pick up all instances of urgent. Where am I searching? In this cell here, and I'm going to F4 twice to remove the $ from the 5. If it finds urgent, it's going to return the position of that word in the text string as a number. And if it doesn't find it, it's going to return an error. Now here's the cool thing about conditional formatting. The formula only needs to return true or any number other than 0 for the format to be applied. Any errors will be treated as false and the format won't be applied. So I can go ahead and choose a format. Let's make the fill red, and again we'll wash it out and make it a bit lighter. And let's also make the font red and bold. OK and OK. And now every row mentioning urgent is flagged immediately. Let's take it one step further. What if we also want to capture mentions of burned out? So again, we're using a formula and we'll use the search function to search for burned out. Where are we searching? In cell H5, and F4 twice to remove the $. This time I'm going to apply a yellow fill color. Use this one here, but let's wash it out a bit. OK, OK, and OK. Now we have two separate visual signals, red for urgent issues and yellow for burnout mentions. HR can prioritize at a glance without reading a single comment. This next one is probably the most satisfying because once you set it up, it updates itself every single day without you touching anything. Here I have a contract renewals table. We've got contract ID, client, account manager, contract value, renewal date, and status. The question every account manager has when they open this file is, what needs attention today? Which contracts are already overdue? And which ones are coming up soon? And which ones can wait? Right now, you'd have to read through every date and do the mental math yourself, so let's fix that. Again, we're going to select all the rows in the table. We'll start with a rule to highlight overdue contracts. So again, we're using a formula, and it simply is the renewal date. Don't forget to F4 twice to remove the $ before the row number, where the renewal date is less than or equal to today. And we'll use the today function, which means it will recalculate automatically every time the file opens. Let's go and apply a format, and we'll give a red fill color, but we really need a default pale pink fill color. That would be helpful. Now let's add a second rule for contracts renewing in the next 7 days. Equals the renewal date, F4 twice to remove the $ from the 7, where it's less than or equal to today plus 7. So in other words, if the renewal date is less than or equal to 7 days from today, we're going to format this with a shade of yellow, and again, we'll wash it out. Okay. Now we have to go into the conditional formatting rules manager and change the order of these so that the yellow rule gets applied after the red. If the red rule is not satisfied, it'll move on to the yellow rule. Let's click OK. And now overdue contracts jump out in red and upcoming renewals flagged in yellow, and everything else is clean and unformatted. And because this data is in an Excel table, I can use the slices here so the manager can filter and just see their data. If you'd like to learn more about slices in tables, there's a link in this workbook that you can download from the video description. And tomorrow, when someone opens this file, the today function recalculates. A contract that was yellow yesterday might be red today. The sheet stays current without anyone touching anything. Excel has a built-in duplicate highlighting rule. You've probably used it. Conditional formatting, highlight cells rules, duplicate values. But the problem with that is it only applies to one column, and it flags every occurrence. The first entry and the duplicate all get highlighted, which means you can't tell which one came in first and which one is the problem, and it can't look across multiple columns at once. But with COUNTIF, we have full control over both of these things. So let's apply a new rule using a formula. Equals COUNTIF. And the rule, we want to check the email, and I want to check a range of emails because I want to count just the first row, then the first and second rows, then the first to the third row, and so on. So the first reference is going to be locked, and the second reference, we're going to delete the $ from before the row. What are we counting? The email. And again, we want to delete the $ from before the row. So where the count of the email address is greater than 1, there must be more than one instance of that email. So row 5 only looks at itself. Row 6 looks at rows 5 and 6. Row 7 looks at rows 5 through 7, and so on. So by the time Excel reaches a duplicate entry, the original has already been counted, and the count comes back with greater than 1. The original stays unformatted, only the repeat gets flagged. All right, let's format it in this shade of orange. We can see James Morton registered twice. This is the first time. It's not formatted. Only the second time and the third time are formatted. Likewise for Diana Chang. Not formatted here. The second time she registered for a course, she gets flagged. Now let's go one step further. What if the same person registers for the same session twice, which is a problem? This time we can use COUNTIFs. We're going to use a formula equals COUNTIFs. That'll allow us to use two criteria. So where the email, and again, we don't want the $ before the row on the second part of the reference, where the emails match, and where the session, again, deleting the $, where the sessions match, where that count is greater than 1, and let's remove the $ from the criteria as well. We're going to format these in red, and we'll tone it down again to a shade of pink. So you can see we use the same expanding range logic, but now we're matching both the email and the session, and both have to match for it to count as a duplicate. So now you have two tiers, red for someone who registered for the exact same session twice. We can see James Morton has registered twice for the morning workshop, and orange for someone who registered multiple times across different sessions. And that's the difference between Excel's built-in duplicate tool and doing it yourself with COUNTIFs. Now for the last section, I want to start with the problem before I show you the solution. Here's a product inventory list, 20 rows, 6 columns. No banded rows with alternating colors to make it easy to read. Now this is a small data set, but imagine if you had 200 rows or 20,000 rows. Tracking across a wide row with your eyes to make sure you're reading the right price against the right product is where mistakes happen. The easiest fix is to format this data in a table and get the automatic banded rows. However, inside tables, you can't use dynamic array formulas that spill, so you need another way to apply the banding, and that's where conditional formatting comes in. So let me Control Z to get rid of the table formatting, and then I'm going to select all the rows, conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula. I'm going to start with the subtotal function. And the first argument of subtotal is what type of aggregation do you want to do. Well, number 3 is the equivalent of count A. So I'm going to count the visible rows. And I'll just reference the first column, colon to the first column. And again, like the previous one, we're going to delete the $ from before the row reference. So as it goes down the table, this range increments by 1 row at a time. Subtotal effectively returns a row number for the visible rows. The first row is 1, the second row is 2, and so on. When the rows are filtered, it doesn't count those rows, and that allows the banding to automatically adjust. And in order to get alternating rows banded, we're going to wrap the subtotal result in the mod function. And the divisor for mod is going to be 2. So mod's going to take the result of subtotal and divide it by 2, and it gives us the remainder. So even row numbers will return 0 and odd row numbers will return 1. Let's go into formatting and we'll just give it a pale shade of grey. Click OK and OK. So you can see the banding has been applied to the odd row numbers. And if I filter on, say, category, let's show audio, displays and peripherals. Click OK. You can see the banded rows update automatically. I don't have to recalculate anything. The conditional formatting is adjusting based on those formulas. It's clean, consistent, just works perfectly. Now, if you want a deeper explanation of how mod works, I've got a dedicated video on that, which I'll link to in the cards, or you can download the workbook and get the link here. If you want to keep building on this, my next recommendation is this video right here, 15 Excel functions every professional should know, because the more functions you know, the more powerful your conditional formatting rules become. I'll see you there.